And now, from the Florida Today Information Center, covering Central Florida's Space Coast. Today in Brevard, your source for community news and information.
Thanks for joining us. I'm Matt Reed. Campus shootings elsewhere have Brevard school and law enforcement leaders looking for ways to secure our kids and control crime. And proposed gun control legislation in Washington has stirred passions among readers on the Space Coast. Today, we dig into the issue of school security, personal safety, and guns with my guest, Brevard County Sheriff Wayne Ivey. We visit a local gun range to learn more about firearm safety and options for personal protection, and we take a look at your feedback on this critical issue. Watch what Sheriff Ivey had to say. Sheriff, in December, we reported that you met with Superintendent Brian Bingley to discuss school security. This was after the Sandy Hook shooting. And you seemed to come away with an idea for a, quote, three-pronged plan that involved increasing the police presence at schools, doing tactical site evaluations, and evaluating the campuses, of course, and then also educating teachers about what to do in an incident like a shooting. I want to come back to those individually in a second, but I wanted to get your take on the overall security now of schools. What was your assessment?
I think everyone in Brevard County should feel very comfortable in the fact that our school system has great plans in place. They have, school boards dealing with critical incidents is nothing new to them. They've been dealing with critical incidents for years. The critical incidents have changed. That's what's happened. I mean, you go back to when I was in elementary school and we used to practice having air raids and getting under our desk in case of a hurricane or a tornado or all of those different variables. Today, we've just had to change what the critical incident is. And our school board, in my opinion, has done a great job, great foundation there. It actually, the timing of it, Dr. Bingley and I had talked about getting together right after we took office as well. And then with Sandy Hook and stuff, it just expedited that. So we just went in, took some of our people, experts in the field, our SWAT team commanders, very tactical, and we wanted to sit down with them and try and build on that foundation that was there.
What does that mean to possibly increase the police presence on schools?
Yeah. Well, our first and immediate goal is, there's been a lot of conversation. We're still waiting to see some of the moves that come out of Tallahassee that might help us in this regard. But our first and foremost thought was, let's increase the presence of our deputies at those schools. And of course, we're talking about our partners too in our local law enforcement, the police departments. But for us, it was let's increase the presence at those schools where we don't already have a school resource officer. Okay. Let's make sure that we're getting our deputies going by those schools as much as they can, visiting those campuses, every aspect of that. And then there are a couple other things, from a kind of a strategic approach to make sure that we have someone there as much as we can as we're trying to put a larger plan in place.
So make sure that every campus is covered, not necessarily have 2 or 3 police officers at some point at each campus.
Yeah, and as we said, there's three-pronged approach to this plan, and that was the first and immediate approach. Leading up to the holidays, we actually put a school resource officer at each campus, following the tragic events at Sandy Hook, and then we started putting our plan in place. So, we're working together. Everybody is obviously focused on the overall mission of protecting our children and our faculty members that are at those campuses.
What do you consider when you do a tactical site evaluation? That was an interesting concept.
Each campus is unique. Each campus brings its own set of circumstances, from an approach of how do we get into a safe room, what areas are out there for us to utilize in those, what is our team going to be doing when they respond to that campus in the event of a critical incident, what's the best approach for us, and how do we evacuate those that are not involved, where are our safe havens for evacuation and stuff. So being that each campus is unique, what we wanted was our SWAT team commander and those working with him to go to that campus, work with the faculty and the administration from each one of them, knowing the strength and weaknesses of those campuses. So in the event that we ever did have a critical incident, we have a perfect plan that's set in place. And I'm a big believer, Matt, in the aspect of don't wait for the emergency to happen to go into action. We're going into action right now, so when that emergency does happen, what we've done is prepared for it in that capacity.
So for a school that is an interior hallway, lots of doors kind of thing, maybe the right approach is a lockdown. But an open campus, like we
Brings an
see that we're
entirely
built in the
different-
70s, maybe you open the doors and let the kids run for it.
You know, it brings an entirely different approach to each one of them, and then of course when you're talking about moving everybody while there is an active shooter or any other scenario that could be going on, what we're looking at is where do we move them to? Where's another safe haven from that?
What about teachers? You know, I've heard a lot of confusion among teachers in Brevard County about whether or not they're even allowed to keep their doors locked during school hours. What do teachers need to know?
You know, for us, what we wanted, and that's the third prong, that educational component, what we wanted was to go to some of their in-service trainings and talk to them about basically some of the things that may trigger in your mind that a situation's about to occur. You know, some of the typical things that you might look at and go, this is not right, we need to go ahead and do something. Those are not always going to be present, unfortunately, but when they are present, we need to take advantage of recognizing them. We're looking at working with our teachers, instructing them in how to get their children to those safe havens, how to lock down. You know, I think when the entire picture from Connecticut is told, you're going to see some very heroic educators that saved a lot of kids' lives as this thing comes out. And some of them either had a plan of action or thought quickly and put a plan of action into play. And then the last thing is, which is often not thought about, the last part of that is, what do you do when the cavalry shows up? What should you be doing to help us? What should you expect from us? And why we do certain things we do?
How will you know it's the cavalry?
Exactly.
And not somebody who's trying to get into your classroom with a...
Exactly right.
We'll have more of my interview with Sheriff Wayne Ivey in just a moment. Now, take a look at what correspondent Luann Manderville learned about staying safe with and around guns.
I'm here at the Port Malabar Rifle and Pistol Club. It's the largest shooting range in Brevard County, and there's over 3,000 members. Joining me is Tom Kehoe, the chief instructor.
How are you doing this morning, Luann?
I am so great. Thank you for joining us. Let's go over some top 5 safety tips for the average person that needs to know about safety and when they're purchasing that gun for the first time.
Okay, well, if you've never owned a gun before, the first thing you ought to do is take a basic pistol class, even before you buy the gun. It's going to help you figure out what kind of a firearm is right for you. It's going to help you figure out if owning a firearm is right for you. It'll expose you to the different kinds of guns that are available. It'll give you a taste of what marksmanship is all about, and it'll help you get grounded in the safety rules and help you to be a responsible gun owner. Tip number 2 is to have a safe place to store the gun, even before you buy it. State law requires that you take responsibility for your firearm, that you store it safely and out of the reach of unauthorized users, whether that's the kid next door, children in your own home, or a spouse who shouldn't have access to the firearm. There's a lot of different ways that you can safely store a firearm. There's everything from gun locks, which immobilize the firearm and render it incapable of operation without any sort of enclosure. There are wall safes that you can put in very easily that open by combination or even by biometrics like your fingerprints. There are more conventional safes. There are bedside safes and there are stand-up safes. All of them offer good solutions and they help you to be a responsible firearms owner. Tip number 3 is, after you've actually purchased the firearm, go out and get some sort of real training in its use. There's all sorts of classes you can take. For example, out here at Port Malabar, we have classes and competitions for all sorts of rifles and pistols, everything from the Single Action Shooter Society, if you've ever wanted to be a cowboy and shoot vintage sorts of firearms. We have practical pistol competitions. We have basic classes in rifle, pistol, and shotgun. We have more advanced classes in marksmanship. We have conventional bullseye pistol classes. So there's a wide variety of training that you can get, either in formal classes or in competition. These sorts of things will help you make sure that you have good habits, that you understand proper marksmanship, and make sure that you're fluent in the use of your firearm. Tip number 4 is to know the safety rules for your firearm, your rights, and your responsibilities. Anytime you take any sort of class for a firearm, they're going to give you 3 basic firearms rules. 1 is always keep the muzzle pointed in a safe direction. 2 is always keep your finger off the trigger until your sights are on the target. And 3rd is keep the gun unloaded until it's ready for use. If you follow those 3 rules, you're always going to be safe with your firearm. Anytime you hear of a firearm accident, it's because one of those rules, and usually multiple rules, have been violated. If you don't violate those rules, you're going to be safe. But you also have rights and responsibilities as a gun owner, and it's your responsibility to know those things. There's a book that was written by a fellow from Orlando called John Guttmacher. It's Florida Firearms Use and Law, and every gun owner should have a copy of it. It spells out in plain language what your rights are, what your responsibilities are. If you're a responsible gun owner, then you help ensure that we'll all keep our rights to own guns for a long time to come. Tip number 5 is to buy a gun that's really suited to your purpose. If you want to shoot conventional pistol matches, for example, then you're really looking for something like a 22 semi-auto, a target gun, or perhaps a 9mm or 45 target pistol. If you want to shoot action sports, the kinds of things where you run around an obstacle course and shoot at steel targets, then you're looking for more practical styles of pistols, maybe in the same calibers though, 9mm or 45. If you want to shoot the cowboy sports, then you're going to need period appropriate firearms, single action revolvers, and lever action rifles. If you're looking for home defense, that's a whole different set of standards that you need to be looking at, and it's much more tailored to the kind of firearm that you can personally handle. And that makes the tip number 1 a whole lot more important too, is getting out and really testing out equipment, taking a basic class before you buy the gun. Helps you make sure that when you make the purchase, you're getting something that's going to be suited to your purpose, something that you can safely control and handle and be accurate with.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
My pleasure.
Great.
So what else can you do to stay safe? I put that question to Sheriff Wayne Ivey. Watch. You have your own program, or you have, called Stay Safe. There are a lot of viewers who want to know what can they do to sort of protect their own personal security. What's some advice that you might have for some of our viewers under the common scenarios that they would encounter when they're going about their daily lives?
Yeah, we do a lot of presentations. In fact, over the past year, almost 2 years, I've done right at 300 plus presentations on either identity theft or violent crime, those type of things. And what we try and get everyone to understand is that we want to give you as much information as we possibly can to help protect yourself. And I call it putting on your bulletproof vest. As law enforcement officers, we wear a bulletproof vest. It doesn't guarantee we're not going to be shot. It doesn't guarantee that it protects our entire body, because our legs, arms, and head are still exposed. But it does protect the largest part of us. So I want to give you the information to protect yourself. I want you to understand that you need to be aware of everything going on around you, that you need to present yourself as a very strong individual, not as a soft target, which is what violent criminals are looking for. So what we really encourage is try and get to some of our crime prevention stuff. You're going to see a whole new face of how we roll crime prevention out. It is going to take on a whole new dynamic, that our primary goal is to reach every citizen through one medium or another, whether it's working with our partners from the media, whether it's Facebook, whether it's FX streaming. All of these things are there for us as tools. And so we're going to try and arm you with that information. For now, even on like the active shooter, there's websites out there that you can go to that provide great education components on what you should do, how to recognize an active shooter scenario, all of the other things. So the bottom line is our primary focus when we're talking to our citizens is we want to give you as much information to protect yourself as you possibly can, because the likelihood of one of us standing beside you when you're about to be the victim is very slim. So we want you to be an extension of law enforcement by knowing how to protect yourself.
Okay, so I saw a study that said that most violent crime against people happens when they're away from their homes. Here's a scenario. I'm a person out shopping, I'm at the mall, I'm in the parking lot. What are some things I should be thinking about and doing to keep from being a victim or lessening the chance that I would be a victim?
Yeah. Well, the three components that go into becoming a victim of violent crime is first and foremost lack of awareness. Either you're not aware of the surroundings you're in, or you're not aware of the potential for harm. Second thing is your body language. Are you projecting that you're not paying attention, that you're a soft target versus a hard target? And then the last thing is wrong place, wrong time. And the last one, there's not a lot you can do about it. It just happens to be, it occurs at that moment in time when you're there. So for us, we focus on the first two, lack of awareness. Be aware that it doesn't It doesn't matter if it's 2 o'clock in the afternoon or 8 o'clock at night. You're leaving a store, you're leaving a parking lot, any of those variables, you need to have your head up. You need to be aware that the potential for a violent attack, someone robbing you, someone stealing your purse, someone stealing your car, all of those are just as strong at 2 in the afternoon or 10 in the morning as they are at 8 o'clock at night. I really, I focus a lot when my wife and I are going shopping or something. I'm watching what are other people doing, you know, and looking at the somewhat subtle mistakes we made. Well, if I'm watching that, so are the criminals. They're out looking for that instant where they can capitalize on that person's mistake. So, you know, be totally aware that I tell everybody, you have to be fully understanding that at any given moment in time, you can become a victim. And so you have to be ready to protect against that. And the best protection is awareness, knowing what's going on. Second thing is your body language. And by body language, I mean, I'm looking at someone, and if I'm thinking about attacking them, and they look like they're very alert, they look like they're talking to someone. We really want, especially you know, our ladies, come out of a store talking on the cell phone, because I know then that you have immediate contact, immediate connection to someone that could be summons for help to you, that could tell you that you're in trouble. So look aware, look alert, and educate yourself on those components, those things that can help you.
We're going to break to hear what Florida Today readers have said about safety guns in schools. Here's public interest curator Alice Garwood.
Stephen Houston of Melbourne urges politicians to compromise on the gun rights issue. The constitutional right to own a gun, like all of our cherished rights, has boundaries. All sides need to work toward balancing our right to own a gun with our right to have our children protected from senseless gun violence. A physician and psychologist shared similar views on the issue. First, Dr. Daniel Woodard of Merritt Island writes, "An armed guard at Columbine did nothing. The guns used by Sandy Hook shooter Adam Lanza were provided by his armed citizen mother, despite his known mental illness. It's time for my fellow physicians to stand up for their dying patients and stop supporting the NRA's fringe politics." And psychologist Carl Freitag of Melbourne writes, "I feel that since we are virtually incapable of identifying and treating the multitudes of people who could kill, it seems logical that the only thing we can do is deny the availability of dangerous semi-automatic weapons to everyone." Joyce Cicero of Melbourne offered this suggestion for curbing gun violence. "Our government is currently working on gun control. Their idea seems to be taking all the guns from all the law-abiding citizens. I have a better way. Make committing a crime with a gun a capital crime with automatic incarceration and/or solitary confinement. Taking guns from lawful citizens just makes them targets." And finally, George Laswell of Cocoa Beach shares this view. "A year ago, when visiting Washington, D.C., I was stunned by the armed police presence. Every federal agency, from the National Archives to the Smithsonian, has its own heavily armed police force. If armed guards are necessary and effective to protect the bureaucrats, why won't armed guards effectively protect our school children?" I'm Alice Garwood, Public Interest Curator at Florida Today. Remember, we welcome your comments on anything you see on this subject or read in Florida Today by sending an email to letters@floridatoday.com.
Now we continue with my interview with Brevard County Sheriff Wayne Ivey for his take on gun control legislation. Here's how he responded. Congress is considering a new gun control law. What do you make of that law? Are there portions of it that you find more promising than others?
You know, I look for real solutions, Matt. I'm looking for real answers to violent crime. And the first thing that stands out to me, and I've said this for a long time, you know, we have measures of gun control that are in place. What we are lacking is criminal control. That's where we're lacking at. We have to start looking at some of these criminals that have been arrested 15 and 20 times that are back out on the streets, and taking the extra measures, the extra things to make sure that they're not. I said it before. I have a friend of mine whose daughter was murdered by a man that was arrested 34 times. That's unacceptable. I guarantee it's unacceptable to him, and it should be unacceptable to everyone else. So, you know, we have these new dynamics, these incidents like Sandy Hook. Obviously, mental health is a consideration. That was one of the things in the executive orders that, or actions that was talked about, is the mental health aspect. I'm very interested in that component. How do we get someone in a situation? How do we get them help? How do we, you know, recognize that mental health condition and be able to avoid a situation like that? But I'm looking for real solutions to it. And as I look over across that band of the 23, I can't say that I see one single thing on there that would have avoided Sandy Hook. There's, you know, so I want us, and what my direction to our team has been, is we are going to focus on the worst of the worst, making sure that violent criminals, from the time we pick them up till the time they're through the process, that we've made everyone aware of their potential to hurt someone.
So what do gun owners think? Here's what Luann learned at the range.
Obviously, today's program is all about guns. Joining me is Kevin McGarry, and I know that you're part of the youth program here at the Port Malabar Rifle and Pistol Club. So I know, obviously, you're a gun owner. What type of guns do you own yourself?
Mainly, we're shotgun shooters. My kids, we did shoot competition shotguns, so that's pretty predominantly what we have is our shotguns for trap and skeet. That's behind us here, and we have 22 rifles that they shoot as well. That's part of their merit badges for the Boy Scouts, and as well as 22 pistols.
And those are all sports. This is why you participate.
Right. Mm-hmm. It's all for sports, yes. They all shoot competition.
We had this recent shooting, and things were very scary for many people. A lot of folks do know about gun protection. They know the laws and they know the safety rules. But there's a lot of people that don't understand that. What is your take on that at this point?
My personal opinion is I believe everybody should be taking a basic class, like ones they offer here, where they offer NRI basic firearms classes. Those are very big with the safety. Again, I'm all about youth, so the very first thing we teach is the safety, proper handling, so there's no mishaps, proper storage at home, so when otherwise people can't get it. I mean, that's our main focus is that priority before we even get into the competition aspect.
Right. On a personal note, do you feel like the laws are the way they should be now, or do you think, you know, are we in need for at least some change?
I'm kind of apolitical on that one because of what I do with the youth program and the shooting. Mm-hmm. So I haven't really taken a look to see until, I'd have to see, I guess, see what comes out about it and then see. But I doubt they'll affect personal, what we use with the sporting aspect of it.
Kevin, are there any specific issues, clarifications that you need to make for the general public?
I think probably the most important thing is if they follow the 3 main safety rules, you won't have these accidents, you won't have injuries, and they're perfectly safe. It'll be like any other type of a tool. And a lot of people have that, especially with me with the youth. They kind of give me this look when I have 7-year-old girls, you know, shooting shotguns. And the main thing is safety. You'd be surprised. It doesn't take that long, a few hours of lecture or classroom, so to speak. And as long as they follow those safety rules, the guns will not go off by themselves. They won't have the accidents.
Great.
And that's the most important thing.
We'll close the program with Sheriff Wayne Ivey's plan for fighting crime in Brevard. Well, let's talk about your plans for the Sheriff's Office. There are a couple of new task forces that you want to create. One is the Economic Crimes Task Force. Mm-hmm. What would that do?
You know, the Economic Crimes Task Force is, it has one design, and that is Brevard County ranks 105th in the nation in the most incidents of fraud. Dallas-Fort Worth ranks 119th behind us. So when I'm looking at what's really impacting our citizens, I mean, obviously violent crime is forever present right at the front of our minds. The pill initiatives and the narcotics initiatives that we have in place, they're right there as well. But then we have to take that next step. What's the next thing that's impacting our citizens? And especially with our strong senior population, we see our seniors so often are the primary targets of economic crimes, identity theft, credit card fraud, scams. All of those fall under that umbrella of economic crimes. And when you consider that the latest statistics show that 1 in every 700 perpetrators of fraud goes to jail, basically they're coming back, they're getting back out, or they're getting released, bonded out, and they're going right back into committing crime. So we have to do something. We looked at a very brief study of our general crimes unit. About 27% of our cases are from economic crimes, what would fall into that economic crimes umbrella. So for us, it makes sense to join, just like we did with the Game Over Task Force. We have one mission with that Game Over Task Force, that's to take violent criminals off the street. The one mission of the Economic Crimes Team is going to be to focus on frauds, whether it's identity theft, credit card fraud, scams, internet fraud. All of those things will fall. Even you know, I think the IRS just released a number that almost $2 billion is lost annually to the identity theft scam, where somebody files Matt's taxes. They file it, and then he goes to file it and doesn't. It kicks it back out of the system. All of those fall under that umbrella, and we're going to partner with our local and state partners. We've already got some commitments to create that task force. We're going to take from us existing resources that we have, that we're going to reshift their focus and put them into play on this. And my goal is to not only go after those that are committing the crimes, but go after them in such a capacity that we're able to get them significant prison sentences and get them off the street so they can't hurt our seniors or anyone else.
You've also got a crime prevention task force that you're talking about setting up. Explain that.
Yeah, well, basically what we looked at is we have, throughout history of law enforcement, we've always created a task force to face a crime trend, whether it was violent crime or narcotics, or in this case, economic crimes. But we struggle to find any history of where a crime prevention task force was ever put into play. And what I'm looking at is our agents are second to none. They can investigate a crime. Our deputies, they can solve those crimes. But you're still a victim. You've still been victimized. Your family's been victimized. And even though we're arresting the individual and bringing closure to that case, you still had to go through it. What I'm looking at is, how do I keep you from ever becoming a victim? I want to get you vital crime prevention information before you become a victim and not after you become a victim. So for us, we started looking at it. I started talking with some of our local partners here about the aspect of creating a crime prevention task force where we all work together, we're all delivering the same message, and it doesn't matter if you're wearing a green uniform or a blue uniform. The information is designed to protect our citizens. And so we're very early in the process, but we are diving into that, have some great commitments toward it, and I think our overall goal is to keep you from becoming a victim. We want to give you that bulletproof vest to put on.
It's been a while since we've done any reporting on the jail. I think it might have been 10 years ago that we had a spate of suicides out there. There were problems with crowding. Where do things stand today? You know, every day I get a report on our capacity, our jail capacity. We are significantly under capacity. We have a great team out there. Our team that's in place out there, our management team and all of our correctional deputies, our staff, all of them work every day in a very tough environment, but do a great job for us. And there's some components out there that go on behind the scenes that a lot of people don't see. We have a mental health component out there that is probably one of the best in the nation, in my opinion. We have our medical components, all of them working together to make sure that that facility runs and operates. And I'll tell you, looking at it across the board from efficiency, when you look at our jail, it is the second most efficient jail in Central Florida. And it is second only because Seminole County houses federal inmates, and they get a lot of federal funding to do that. And so when you look at it on a per diem basis and you look at it on funding, we are the second most efficient jail, and other than the federal inmates, we would be at the top. You're going from this interview to a fitting for a fashion show. Explain yourself. I am going to be in a fashion show, I believe, next Friday. It's the League of Women Voters. They actually do it every time there's every 4 years with the election. And newly elected offices and officials are asked to model in it. I personally think they're scraping the bottom of the barrel by asking me to do it, but I'm excited. It's going to be fun. So. I think you cut a striking figure in the uniform. They ought to have you model that. Well, thanks for joining us here today. Very informative. That's our program. Thanks for joining us. Remember, to comment on anything you see on this program, send an email to letters@floridatoday.com. We'll see you right here next week on WBCC and FloridaToday.com.